And a 5-metre saltwater crocodile up in Darwin has offered his election prediction ahead of Saturday's big poll. At first, Bert seemed swayed by opposition leader Bill Shorten, but a last-minute change of heart saw him go with Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull.
And for specialist commentary on this, we turn to Australia's premier psychic crocodile expert, the opposition leader Bill Shorten. Thanks for joining us. Clearly a devastating blow. Can you recover from that?
Well, actually, Bert is also the name of a seat in Western Australia we're trying to win. So when I opened the newspapers this morning and found out that Bert had gone for Liberal, I thought we were ahead. Yeah, so I can deal with the crocodile. I just need the seat in Western Australia.
I'd be sick if Bert get rid of the plebiscite. I reckon it'd be cheaper, wouldn't it? It could be handy. Hey, the election campaign, the massive job, obviously. Saturday's the day. Now it's like a job interview. This, isn't it? Where are your employer?
Yeah.
So we get to decide.
16.
So the question you get asked when you go for an interview is what's your weakness? I want to know what your weakness is, and you can't say I work too hard or I care too much. That's cheating. What's your weakness?
Well, I suppose. Gee, no, that's not easy to think of. I think it is that sometimes in politics, everyone's got to be black and white, and the fact of the matter is that I don't hate the Liberal Party. I think we've got better ideas, but you know, I think sometimes we have too much conflict. Everything gets dumbed down to 15-second sound bites, and I'd sometimes like to take longer to make my point and work issues through, and sometimes work with the Liberals as opposed to always being in each other's throats.
Yeah, running out of time. Next question.
With all respect, I feel a majority of Australians are completely disengaged with politics at the moment. They don't want to know about politics, and they believe that both leaders aren't truthful and honest. Truth is a big issue. Some may say you were instrumental in bringing down 2 Prime Ministers, Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard, knifing them both. Why should the Australian public trust you?
Well, everything I've ever done has been based upon what I think is important for people. And Labor's learnt its lesson. When we woke up after the 2013 election on the Sunday morning, we realised we can't afford that sort of harmful disunity. Now, the Liberal Party's had their burst of disunity, so the way that Australians can trust us is we've chosen to provide a full agenda of policies. We've chosen to be upfront. We've outlined everything we're going to do on jobs, education and Medicare, climate change, NBN and housing affordability. What we're doing is behaving in a united fashion, and we're presenting positive plans to explain exactly what we would do if we get elected.
But Mr Shorten, some may say by knifing Mr Rudd and Julia Gillard, you were putting the interests of the party before the interests of the nation and the people.
Well, I think it's important that the Labor Party learns its lessons from that. And the fact of the matter is people really do disapprove of that disunity. I mean, I guess we saw that again when Mr Turnbull paid the same compliment to Tony Abbott. But what the Labor Party's done is for the last 1,000 days, we have been united. We've put a lot of that sort of disunity and interest in ourselves aside. And at this election, we've done what an opposition isn't meant to do. We've provided a whole set of policies. Normally in Australian politics, you wait for the government to fall over. Opposition's a small target. But we've offered policies to save Medicare, to make sure that first home buyers can compete on a level playing field with people, investment speculators. You know, we're being upfront with people about what we would do.
You know, it's fascinating watching you answer these questions because you are so modulated and so calm. But there's these panic stations. So many people have not decided how they're going to vote. We've heard everything from the coalition. We've heard it from the Labor Party. What can you say to us now, to the people who don't know who they're going to vote for? Or what's the thing you could tell us that would sway that vote your way? The thing we haven't heard before.
Well, I think that for people who've been disengaged, they need to understand that their vote can make a difference. What we're offering Australian people is to properly fund Medicare and not...
No, but you've told us all of that before. I mean, we're talking about the hearts and minds of the nation. Is there something we're yearning for that we have not heard from either political party yet?
Well, I think that whilst you say some people have heard this debate about Medicare and education and climate change and first-rate NBN, what underpins our view of Australia is that we think this country works best when we can have less inequality rather than more inequality. What we think underpins the growth of this country and a better future for all people is when we have inclusive growth. That's a fancy term, but what it means is if you treat people fairly, if you offer equal opportunity to all people, doesn't matter if you're a poor kid, you can get good quality resources at school. if you offer people the chance to be able to go to the doctor and they can afford to go to the doctor, if we take real action on climate change, set ambitious targets and goals rather than pass the problem to future generations, I think one of the key examples of us being trustworthy with the Australian people is we've tackled this issue of negative gearing. You know, everyone said for 30 years you can't do anything about housing affordability. As I think this show said the other night, we're now the second most expensive country in the world for people to buy their first home.
Sorry, Bill, only I get to talk about negative gearing on this show. Can I pull you up on the costings issue, right? Because the budget deficit's a big issue. It has been for a long time and it's becoming more urgent. When you were in opposition, when you were in opposition during this term, you was saying that our credit rating is at risk. Then we've had the budget. You said they're not managing, the coalition's not managing the budget, our credit rating's at risk, and now you've announced your costings and you're going to blow out the deficit further, thereby putting our credit rating further at risk, meaning that to pay back the debt is going to be even harder than it otherwise would have been if we do lose our credit rating. Isn't this just irresponsible at this point, to be blowing out the budget in the short term and taking that huge fiscal risk?
Actually, the answer to your question also goes to what Tash was saying before about trusting people. We've said that we will get back to balance and sort out deficit in the same year the Liberals will. But what I can't do is say that we're going to sort out the deficit in the short term by smashing family budgets. We're not going to see family payments to families who earn less than $100,000 cut to fix the budget.
I understand that point, but the consequence is if you're going to blow it out in the short term, if we do lose our credit rating, then we're going to become even further in debt, which means all the stuff that you're saying we're going to be able to give back to people, we're suddenly not going to be able to give back to people because the money just won't be there to do that.
There is a clear choice. What we're saying is you can repair the budget in the medium and the long term. But what we don't want to do is make promises which can't be kept. This government's proposing that they can improve the budget position by pretending that they're so-called zombie measures. These are measures which will never get through the Senate, increasing the working age to 70.
Including the ones that you recently changed your mind on and did support after you said you wouldn't?
Well, we're not supporting increasing the working age to 70. This government, part of their economic plan, is to pretend that they can pass things through Parliament which will never see the light of day. The other big difference between us and them is we think we can improve the budget. But we do it not by giving $50 billion of our budget money back to large corporations. We think the long-term improvement for the budget is if you've got a skilled workforce, if you've got first-class roads, rail and NBN, if you've got a healthy workforce by helping save Medicare. We've got budget repair that's fair. This government's just proposing savage cuts, and they're not actually going to improve the budget bottom line anyway.
All right. We should point out that we have approached the Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, to be on this show several times. In fact, Malcolm, still a couple of days left, so your invitation, if you want to sit in this seat, it is there. In the meantime, would you please thank Bill Shorten? All right, we're going to take a break. Back very soon.